Well, welcome back to the Christian Core Values and Ethics course by Servant Leaders. On this video, we pick up at the section How Are Core Values and Ethics Formed. What we do during this section is not discuss how to form biblical core values yet, but just understanding the foundations of how we've come to the core values that we currently have. And so as we think about how our core values and ethics forms, we need to consider this first principle. Principle number 4 tells us that every person operates with some form of core values or ethics. And that means that at some point in our life we have developed a set of core values and ethics. Maybe we haven't yet considered what they are, or we haven't analyzed them enough to understand what they are. We haven't written them down, we haven't processed them, but we all operate with some set of core values and ethics. And there are many things that influence those core values and ethics, and a couple of those different things that influence our core values and ethics are things like culture, the culture that we were brought up in and raised in, such as the American culture is entirely different than the Japanese culture. And so the type of culture we're raised in has an influence upon our core values. The family that we're brought up in, the family that we've come to know, those influences have an impact upon the core values that we have. The religion that we were brought up in, or not brought up in, for that part, all has influences upon our core values. Our education, and then also the experiences that we have in life. So all of these different things have an influence upon the core values that we've established in our lives. And again, we may not know what our core values are yet, but those things have influenced our core values. So the question that comes is, why is adopting biblical core values such a challenge if I've already got core values? Can't I just manipulate my core values and allow those to become biblical core values? And to some extent, that it will be what's going to take place is a conversion of your current core values to better reflect biblical truth, so that your life will reflect Jesus Christ in the world. So one of the reasons that adopting biblical core values is a challenge is the type of filter we use to develop core values from all of those influences that we just looked at. So before salvation, remember, as we looked at Romans 12:1 and 2, it talked about not being conformed any longer to the pattern of this world, but being transformed by the renewing of your mind. And all of that is because, in view of God's mercies, we're seeking to offer ourselves as a living sacrifice. But prior to salvation in our lives, we're just conformed to the pattern of the world around us. And so the world around us is all of these different influences that we have, and those are being conformed, or our core values are being conformed to those things because we have no other comparison to make against them. And so we dump all of that stuff inside our filter here. And the filter that's being utilized at this point in our lives is this filter. I'm the most important person. And that's because self is the predominant person that we're seeking to make happy prior to salvation. And really, we can look at this in the lives of children, that selfishness is a pretty core attitude. Paul David Tripp says in his book Parenting that we are self-anointed self-sovereigns who are just looking to do life however we want to do life. And so that is our biggest challenge. So we take all of those influences that we had, we run them through the filter of self, and we end up with a set of personal values. And really, those personal values are about whatever makes me happy. And so I'm going to prioritize, I'm going to value in life those things that make me happy. Now the challenge comes when post-salvation, when we are to be transformed, and we take all of these same influences and we have to put them through a different kind of filter. When we put them in a different kind of filter, then we're going to end up with biblical core values to work with. And that filter is what glorifies God. And so, because we've been in view of God's mercies, as Romans 12:1 tells us, we now have a different person to live for. It's no longer about what makes me happy, primarily. Instead, it's about what glorifies God. Now, John Piper is the one who says that God is most glorified by us when we are most satisfied in Him. And so our happiness is really a result of bringing glory to God. And so as we filter all of those influences that take place in life through Christ, we now have a transformed set of values, which we can call biblical values, or Christian values. And so this is based upon then our desire to glorify God and God alone, as opposed to what makes me happy. Now, hopefully the result in the end is the same, but it's going to come in a different way, in a different format. A couple of quotes that are related to this. It says this, what are you really living for? It's crucial to realize that you either glorify God or you glorify something or someone else. You're always making something look big. And so we have a tendency in life maybe not to think about what it is that we're doing and how that either glorifies God or doesn't glorify God, or who it does glorify. But this particular author poses that we need to consider the ramifications of our actions, because everything we do has a way of glorifying something. And so who in the end is it that we want to glorify? And Augustine said this, because the face of God is so lovely, my brothers and sisters, so beautiful, once you've seen it, nothing else can give you pleasure. It will give insatiable satisfaction, of which we will never tire. We will always be hungry and always have our fill. And so what happens is, once we really come to an understanding of the mercies of God, then the pattern of the world does not satisfy our lives. Now, we know that we will once in a while fall back into the pattern of this world for momentary gratification. But if we truly are changed, we've truly met the mercies of God, we've truly seen God, then we recognize that those things, they don't have the satisfaction, the long-lasting satisfaction that a life that is committed to glorifying God does. So to kind of wrap up this section here, we say that the next principle to live by is the filter, or to consider, is the filter we employ impacts the values we form. This is pretty important, because this really becomes the evaluation tool that we can use to determine what type of core value we are clinging to, what type of priority we're hanging on to. And what we'll look at in the next video is this challenge that begins to take place in sorting out then the two different types of core values that we hold on to, and how they impact the life that we live. See you in the next video.